So we're standing on a precipice at this moment in time, looking into a future in a post-pandemic world while still living in it. What we do next is up to us. It's a decision that we must make, and it's a decision that will impact our lives and our future and the future of generations to come. What kind of society do we want to live in? What kind of legacy do we want to leave? Who do we want to be going forward? These are going to be the most important decisions and questions of our lifetime. You know, this reminds me of the scene from the movie The Matrix. I'm a big movie buff. And Neo is sitting in front of Morpheus, who holds a red pill in one hand and a blue pill in the other. And he gives Neo a simple choice. Take the blue pill, go back into the Matrix, forget all that he's seen, and go back to where it's comfortable and safe. Or take the red pill and see the world as it really is. Wake up from humanity's collective dream. We're standing in that moment right now. After all this time, people are making that decision, the decision to be at that precipice. Where do they want to be and who do they want to be? But before we talk about where do we go from here, we first need to understand where we are and how we got here. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've been mayor of Clinton, New Jersey for almost 10 years. It's so small that if it weren't for the traffic signs on the highway, you would miss it. The last couple of years, things have been going really well. Businesses were thriving. New businesses were opening up. New families were moving in. Everyone was so busy and caught up in their work and family lives. Neighbors spent time together and knew one another. The town parades and picnics and races and music festivals and such, they were pretty popular. Everyone loved coming to Clinton. And then on March 13th, 2020, the world as we knew it ceased to exist. It was if a massive COVID switch turned everything off. Businesses, schools, and parks were closed. Holiday parades and events abruptly canceled. It was as if everything around us had just stopped. A town that was always bustling screeched to a halt. When we hit those brakes, that stop was pretty hard, caused some panic and some pain. Questions were coming from every direction. And unlike other natural disasters, the world continued to look normal, which created even more confusion for people. Residents and business owners and workers were struggling to understand, and they looked to me for the answers. We watched as the virus began to strike our residents. Aged neighbors struggled to get their groceries. Parents and students had to figure out remote schooling and remote working and Zoom. Oh my God, Zoom. And when we realized that it was going to be longer than just a couple of weeks, we said, don't worry, a couple of weeks, we'll be back to normal. Little did we know that those weeks would turn into months and then a half a year and longer still. That initial fear turned into depression, bewilderment, and anger. And of course, a second man-made pressure point erupted. Communities around the country became the stage for protests for social change. It was hard to ignore when we were in isolation. And for many of us, it was happening in our backyards. Add a third layer where leaders were sowing those seeds of doubt about the trustworthiness of our voting system. It impacted the elections all the way down to my small town. That dash that dash between March 2020 and March 2021 is probably going to go down as one of the most painful in modern history. Because for all the good that we saw, we also saw the bad that can come when you choose that wrong pill. So back to my initial statement. We're standing on this ledge. Where do we go from here? We're moving towards this post-pandemic era. And what's next? Do we take that blue pill and go back into the blissful ignorance of the matrix? Or do we take the red pill and reset and notice our flaws? But if you think about it, what does reset really mean? I ask that question all the time. We reset our lives regularly. We change jobs. We move to new homes, find new friends, adopt new lifestyles. These are all the changes that we take. And sometimes they're forced upon us, and sometimes we choose them. What makes those changes successful, I'm going to tell you, are two things: determination and a help from others. So let's reframe our reset. The world has changed forever. We're not going back to normal, and we've changed too. We need to learn and move forward and get to a place that we can be collectively resilient. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Nothing was worse than these last 14 months, right? Can we come out of this stronger? Can we face our flaws and fix them? Can we learn to trust again? I'm hoping you answered yes to all of them, as I did. And this is how we get to our collective good. This is that first stage. I got to see firsthand how home isolation turned into quality family time. I was inspired by businesses that changed the model of their business to accommodate for the safety of their patrons. I watched as families walked together. Neighbors would host driveway pop-ups just to visit. Picnics were happening in the park. And dogs. How many of you saw dogs? Lots of dogs. I was inspired watching little kids hunt through home windows looking for teddy bears, and residents light their walkways and driveways with luminaries to thank the essential workers that continued to do their job at great personal cost. It was as if we had rediscovered the meaning of community. It wasn't the material things. It wasn't how many activities your kids were involved in or how late you had to work. It was the little things, because those little things became the big things this last year. So let's go back to the collective good. How do we focus and move society to a place where we all benefit, where we all learn and grow and live? You know, I don't know if you've noticed, but over the last couple of decades, American culture has shifted. We've gone from the collective good to the individual good. So in other words, we've gone from community to individual freedoms. Individual freedoms work during the best of times, but can be disruptive during times of crisis, because it's the collective efforts to overcome adversity that moves us forward. We've also become a society of victims. We've taken the hyper-partisan, it's not my fault, and blame game. The slightest wrong gets blamed on someone else or something else, and nothing is off the table with the blame game. News organizations are struggling with their stories. They are focusing on the individual needs of their viewers rather than the collective good of our communities. And political leaders are feeling that same pressure. We're spinning the facts and creating a news story. And at the same time, calling other news fake. So many Americans today don't know who to trust when they get their news. They trust people they know over the verified facts. And you've got these opinion makers and leaders who are using individual rights to sway our communities away from the collective good, to focus on issues that can impact our health, our safety, our institutions, and our very voting system. They're also creating this discord. There's a disconnect between having a conversation, listening to what is going on, and a willingness to stand up and talk about what's right. We get caught up in that hyper partisanship. It's the ear pleasing of the news stories. It's the social grandstanding on systemic issues. These are the things that need to change. And we can only do it by working together. And here's where we start. It starts with us. We have an unbelievable opportunity over the next few years to take all that we've learned, and man, have we learned a lot, right? There are things I've learned about people I don't ever want to know again. But we can take all of this to become better and to do better, to create a society that is encompassing for everyone, so that it's not just that hyper partisan, but it's about a true meaning. And it starts with a ground up approach. Change Clinton to any other town or city name, wherever you live. In this country, there are more than 19,000 towns, villages, and cities, and more than 16,000 have less than 10,000 residents. There's your opportunity. During the pandemic and the protests, we had to take whatever we could find. We looked for resources to help our residents, to get the questions answered that were so desperately needed. We worked together and we created alliances. We found that we were stronger when we worked together. And true leadership doesn't come from a title. True leadership came because we put the effort. We took the time to understand what was needed, to focus on the community and the individuals, and to be better and do better, to give back to a community that was so desperately looking for anything. And we didn't stop with just our town. We helped everyone. It wasn't about, all right, you only live in Clinton or Clinton Township and we're not going to help you. We helped everyone because that's what this was about. True leadership is for the collective good. So how? CDC taught us how to physically interact with people, right? You know, do you fist bump or elbow bump or, you know, God forbid you shake hands. But what the CDC couldn't do was give us the emotional and intellectual interactions. That falls to us. We need to be better and do better. We need to understand how that interaction is going to be going forward. We need to hold our leaders accountable to be the change and do the change that needs to happen. And it starts with resiliency, right? If we focus on resilience as part of our collective reset, we can bring forward the opportunity to share experiences. We can use it as an opportunity to show that we can do better for our communities. We can be the resilient leaders that this country so desperately needs. And again, it's not about the title. Any one of you can step up and be part of that change and be part of the solution. Technology. Look at that. The Resiliency Leadership Institute tells us that true resilience is the ability to effectively adapt to challenge, change, and complexity in a way that enhances the experience and not diminishes it. In other words, we grow stronger from adversity. So I'm going to tell you about it, my personal resilience test. It happened last year. We had a protest that happened in town and we had no time to prepare for it. We were literally given days to ensure that we could protect our citizens and the participants. If I look back on it, I think we did a pretty good job, but it wasn't perfect. The point I want to make is it wasn't my measurement or our measurement that mattered. It was the measurement of the individuals who were participating and the social imagery that happened after the fact. The individuals used their voice to show disdain, to believe, to share that we were ill-informed and not prepared to understand what was happening in our society and our culture. And I'll tell you, for me personally, that was probably one of the most difficult tests I've ever had to go through. You know, in politics, you have to have a thick skin. And that to me was both deeply personal and professionally challenging. My vulnerabilities were out there on display, believe me. My residents saw it, my friends, family, neighbors, everyone. I saw you, I was crying in your face. But it was the help of my community that restored my faith and my ability to lead and gave me the strength to continue moving forward. So going forward, we need to become resilient. And how do we do that? We go through the process. We focus on issues that are important. We look for goals that create the greater good. We give back to our communities and to society. This is about the collective, not about the individual. It's bringing us back to a community versus our individual freedoms. No one denies your individual freedoms, but if we don't have that ability to see and hear what our neighbors are feeling, then we've just isolated ourselves and we're not part of how we move forward. And that's where we begin our collective resiliency. You know, as we start to get back to normal, normal is that blue pill. Normal is forgetting all that we've learned over this past year and going back to a place that feels safe and comfortable. That is the illusion. And that is not about collective resiliency. We have to learn from the crisis. We have to be able to know that our communities are going to be stronger from all that we've endured and all that we've experienced. Now I'll go back to our leaders and the efforts that they've done to undermine our local elections, our national elections. If you think about it, the communities we've struggled. There was an attempt to overthrow our government's legislative branch. Those are the things that will continue to keep us where we're at. That won't give us the opportunity to grow and become better, to do better. We need to hold our leaders accountable. We need to let them know that business as usual doesn't work anymore. They need to be aware that even when it's not election season, they need to engage in constant communication and open dialogue. Because together we can adapt and be agile. We can transition on a dime and focus on addressing the questions and concerns that come up. It's not about how do we go back to what we had. What we had is gone. Throw it away, pretend it doesn't exist. It's not there anymore. We have a clean slate. We get to start fresh and we get to create an environment where everyone is welcome. Everyone is a part of the community. And together we're going to solve the hard stuff. We're not going to make it the easy way out. Business as usual, I said, no longer the norm. We are going to continue to be an ever-changing, ever-evolving society. And it's on us. Each and every one of us has to be a part of that collective change and the collective good. Because there's a new normal. And that new normal is going to give us that chance. It's going to give us a society that is inclusive, that is adaptive, and that is open to anyone and everyone who wants to be a part of it. We're going to reset our leadership. We're going to reset the hate. We're going to reset the deniers. We're going to reset the bias. We're going to reset the blame. We're going to reset our standards. And together we are going to create and build this new world order that will be there for us and will provide for our future generations. That future you want your kids and your grandkids and everyone else to experience, that's what we're building together. We're going to reset through this collective resiliency. I choose the red pill. I hope that you do too. Thank you.